Thanks for coming on to my show. It's great meeting you.
Good to meet you as well.
What made you say yes to coming on my show? Like, have you done any other recorded interviews before, or how come
I've done,
mine?
yeah, I've done quite a few before, um, but not many where I talk about magic. More so, just because I do a lot of things nowadays.
Whatever stuff do you
So
do?
I do a little bit of hypnotism sometimes, just because it pays more, as well as my main job is art, so I do things on the convention marketplace.
What inspired you to become a magician? Did something happen in your childhood to kind of get you that way, or what? What was the
I mean, we had the occasional magic shows, sure, but nothing really got me going until like middle school. I wanted to figure out how to, fit in better, and I saw on TV David Blaine's Street Magic, which was a big magic special from 2003, and I watched that. And magic before then to me was like you go on stage and you do a big trick with a big fancy outfit, but David Blaine was different. He would just wear like jeans and like a sweaty gray t-shirt and do really credible magic tricks for just people on the street, and that sort of changed my view on. So I just picked up a YouTube tutorial since then and haven't really looked back.
how did your view on you said it changed? Like, what was your kind of your view on it before? Like, you had to do a lot of extravagant things, or like how so, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really do magic until middle school, but it, I mean, because, it seems so expensive and so fancy, and that wasn't something I really wanted to do, nor have I really done something like that to this point. Um, but it was, it started, it all started with just a deck of cards for me, and it's just sort of more has come from it since then, now that I've been able to, like, afford actual props and things, but like just the fact that you can buy a deck of cards for maybe $4 at a Target or a Walmart and be able to do magic is really nice nowadays.
What was what would you say your first magic trick was? Like, if you remember, what was, if you can choose, I guess. But
Probably so every month at a comedy club downtown, we have an event called No Shame Theater, and at the time friend was the one that started it, and it's essentially because in the Des Moines area we have so many uh open mic nights that it makes you want to vomit sometimes.
mhm.
And they're not usually that receptive to magicians doing stand-up segments or any magic at all because it's comedy.
Yeah.
So my friend started No Shame as a stage for people who don't do comedy to take up, and we had singers, we had freak show performers, we had dancers, but as far as I remember, ever since I started doing it before COVID, that I've been the only fully steady magician that's done more than like one or two shows. So that started about, I think that started my freshman year of high school. That was the first shows I really ever did, and I still did them up until this year. They're done for this year. Since the venue that we use is getting torn down and being relocated, so the ones we're doing are done for this year. But it's been nice.
Would you say you always enjoyed just in magistry since the beginning, or did you kind of have to get into it?
I mean, I definitely enjoyed it since the beginning because Magic has sort of a learning curve when it comes to a lot of things. With Magic, well, I guess it's especially with card Magic. There's some really easy tricks that only require you to know some really basic knowledge of Magic, what we call a double lift, basic knowledge of misdirection. But what got me what kept me going with it is that there's such a high skill ceiling that you can achieve if you really worked hard for it. Like especially in card magic, there are a lot of really hard card moves that even I don't know how to do because I don't think I'll spend that much time doing card magic. So there's a lot that can go into it. You just kind of have to pick how far you're willing to go.
How did your family react to you? I assume you do magic for a job. Like how much what did they react to it?
I mean, they're very skeptical at first about its credibility, I guess, as an actual job. Back when I was still trying to make it full time. More nowadays, just because I like art a bit more, it's kind of taken a part time seat. But um, I mean, originally they were a bit skeptical. They liked it as a hobby, but when it came time to make it a job, they weren't exactly too open to thinking about it that way. But after they came out to one of the shows, and big crowd, big paycheck always helps too.
Mhm.
After those things, they kind of became more receptive and started kind of accepting that that's what I was trying to do at the time.
Did you have any turning points in your career when becoming a magician?
Um, I think a turning point was getting to perform at Six Flags. That was certainly the one turning point. I mean, currently it's still the only like actual gig that I did at an amusement park because that's sort of like the magician standard. It's just going and doing an amusement park gig. Um, but it was definitely a surprise that I got to perform there for their grad night 2 years ago or now, or maybe three. It's been a bit. That was sort of the moment where I was thinking, like, I think I'm kind of moving on up a little bit, which is nice.
You said it felt nice. Like what? How did it feel? Like performing there.
It's very different from anywhere I'd ever performed. I'm not much of a kids magician at all. Like I think I've done one kid's birthday party and called it good because I just don't perform well for kids only. I'm more of a family, if not an adult magician, just by my presentation style alone. But the crowd there is quite different at amusement parks because it is family, but they're also like they're kind of in a hurry, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So, the magic tricks can't drag out for too long. They gotta be up there. They gotta represent what's
Yeah.
happening and everything, and then they gotta they gotta understand the trick quite quickly. Otherwise, they're gonna leave. So it was interesting to try to figure out a trick, a trick to start with, a trick in the middle, and a trick to end with that had the perfect balance of a bit of comedy, a bit of explanation, and a good magical moment. Because otherwise, they're probably going to lose interest.
Do you have any memorable times in your career that, or just even as a magician or hypnotist or whatever you want to call it, like, are there any memorable times in that career that you still kind of keep in your mind locked away?
I mean, there's good ones and there's bad ones. The bad ones take more precedence than the good ones because the good ones are Um, I mean, as a magician, you don't really get much more than some kid coming up to you and saying that they want to do magic. That's happened quite a few times. Kids come up after the show, uh, and they say that was really cool. How'd you do that? And as a magician, you can't really tell them, so you have to say like, well, we do it magically, of course, but there is a trick that I can actually teach you. And then we magicians have tricks that we're okay giving to kids because if we don't have a trick we give to a kid, how are we gonna get more magicians in the future? So certainly for good experiences, it's always being nice to just perform for people. That's what I enjoy the most about it. But then hopefully inspiring the future magicians of the world because we do need them. We need more magicians, and we have thankfully relaxed on the magic, the breaking the magic code, teaching tricks. We've relaxed on that a bit, and kind of accepted that we do need to teach kids new tricks. So it's always nice to inspire the newer generations.
Yeah. Would you say magic is more like a secret reality, art, a trick? Like, what would you describe art as?
It is definitely a performance art. I think it's as I used to do a lot of street performing and mime stuff, so I understand what goes into I understand what goes into performing, but I would say that magic is the only real, like, the only real on the spot performance art that's left almost, because when like you go to a stage production or you watch somebody on the street, or something like that, if they mess up anything, if they flub a line, if they break a prop, things like that, it's laughed off because it's just, it's a show, it can go wrong. But with magic, if you screw something up or you do it wrong or something goes wrong, then you do screw up, but then people are like, oh, the magician screwed up, oh, magic isn't real. And then you have to, you kind of
Fix
have
that.
to work around that a little bit.
Would you would you say there? Which one? You said you did multiple types of like you did hypnotism and like I think something else I recall. You which one do you prefer most?
Currently, I prefer magic. As much as I love hypnotism, it can get droning sometimes because, like, as a hypnotist, the way I perform is I have a script, I memorized it, and now it's the script that I use for every single show, minus me taking out a few bits every now and then to swap them with other bits in the show. But with magic, I perform very freely. I don't really have many scripts for my tricks because I just prefer going in completely fresh and just sort of making jokes and
Yeah.
performing them by how I feel the audience is reacting to them in general.
Uh, uh, what is your like? Why did you choose? You said it was David Blaine, but like, is there a deeper sense of like why you chose magic?
I think it's just because I like performing in general. Um, it's sort of I've always enjoyed inhabiting another character, whether that's for performing magic, performing on stage, or performing for anything else. I've always enjoyed playing a different character. And with magic, it started as playing another character because we magicians, we have a bunch of different characters that we inhabit sometimes that we pick from. Um, Nowadays, I've learned that I don't really have a character with magic. It's sort of me, my personality just sort of turned up a little bit. Um, so I enjoy being out there and performing for people. And then the nice thing with magic is just being able to do something impressive and uh, something that people have never seen before to really blow them away, I think is what I enjoy about it the most.
Would you say you always want to do? You do you always want to do magic?
I think so. I mean, maybe not to the level that it has been at because and us magicians, we certainly have our hobby magicians. So we have people who just collect tricks to collect them and they don't really do performances. They just like collecting magic tricks, learning how they work and things like that. Um, and I think at some point I'm gonna just go there and be okay with doing a few tricks here and there for the public, but I just like collecting new magic tricks and reading the instructions that other magicians have made for them, and then figuring out like how they work, how they would be performed, and if I'd ever want to actually perform them. I do enjoy that a lot. So it's sort of just figuring it out from there that I have to see what feels right at the time.
Have you had any mentors in your career like that's helped you shape?
Yeah, back when I was starting, My mentors, and he's still my mentors, Steve. Me and him have done quite a few shows together. He trained me up on how to perform magic like properly, because there's a big stepping stone from learning how to perform to actually performing on stage for people.
Yeah,
Um, and he also helped me. He also trained me and helped me get hypnotism under the belt and memorizing it and everything like that. So he's definitely been my mentor through it all, and with magic and hypnotism as well.
yeah, of course, yeah. How would you say you do connect to your audience?
My performance style is very laid back and not too crazy. I mean, I have crazy tricks that I do, like I do swallow needles, swallow razor blades, do dangerous tricks sometimes, but I think the thing that I connect with most is just sort of being more down to earth and real than a lot of magicians, because a lot of magicians like to pretend that something is more impressive than it kind of is, which is not something I'd want to do too much. So my performance style, I essentially talk to the audience like this with a bit more sarcastic jokes thrown in to make it funnier.
Hmm.
But then whenever something impressive happens, it's because I've talked so calmly about what I'm doing that I've lowered the bar so that when it hits, it really hits. I think is why I connect so much with audience members.
Yeah. Have you ever? Maybe I asked this before, but do you have a favorite trick of yours that you have done?
Yeah, you didn't ask that yet. It's fine.
Okay.
I do have a favorite trick. It's actually a trick that I made. In Magic, we have what we call OOTW card trick. It stands for something, but if I tell you what it is, you'll learn how it's done.
Yeah.
Yada yada. And the essential trick is a deck of cards is shuffled in large quotations, and then it's given to the audience member. Two cards are laid down, a red card and a black card, and now the audience member, without looking at the cards, sorts red from black
Hmm.
and everything. And then they're all turned over and it's revealed that they're sorted. We call that an OTW trick. I've made my own version that actually uses a deck of cards that is shuffled and can even be borrowed. And a lot of that's my favorite one because it gets the best reactions from the few that I've created so far. But also, it's actually stumped a lot of magicians because whenever I've shown it to a few magicians, they've always been like, I was following until they got organized because, like, even as magicians, we know how tricks works, but if it's used in a unique way, then we've really got no clue.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I like that. Yeah. At everything, there's always like a person in the background who hates something. How do you deal with the people in the back of the audience who are booing or I don't know, saying it's fake or you know what I mean?
Yeah, so whenever we have hecklers, we kind of have different ways of going around them. We never really want to go through them because it's an unstoppable force with an immovable object. We can have, like, we'll make a few comments, but if they really, really keep it up, we can have our security folks let them know that if they don't knock it off, then they'll probably be asked to leave the show for today. And it's not like if it's a little bit of booing, it's like if every moment I try to talk, they're booing. That's when we'll kind of let them know if they don't knock it off, we'll
Yeah.
escort them from the show for the day. If they're on stage, because you get a lot of people who want to be the big shot on stage and they think contradicting the magician will get them there. Those are my favorite because you can have fun ways of dealing with them, like absent-mindedly almost. Like my favorite is I've done this a few times. I tell them, okay, you're gonna help me with this. I want you to stand right here and hold your hand out like this. And they hold their hand out, and I put a card on their hand, and then I say, okay, hold that card right there, and don't move. And then I just move on to the next trick of whatever I'm doing, and then I end the show, and I just leave. And they just have stood there for the entire show on the side of the stage because I just don't want to deal with them. And Especially when they keep heckling, people laugh at that, and they kind of like point as they leave. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So it's kind of fun to do it that way. And then of course they try to like give the card back and everything. And half the time I'm just left, and they keep the card because as a magician you have so many cards in your house. Like I have a lot of unopened decks still. So it's you can have fun ways of dealing with them. It's definitely a learning curve of learning to deal with them.
Is magistry like a majority of just cards, or what would you say the majority of?
I mean, nowadays it kind of is, especially for hobbyists and new magicians, just because cards are so acceptable and they're so cheap. New
Yeah,
magicians can have something to work towards. And half the time, new magicians only want to work towards card magic, which is fine. Um, so I definitely think it's the majority, but there are a lot of tricks that don't use cards, and I've sort of moved away a little bit from cards because I like the variety. So I do other props nowadays as well. But cards is always good to fall back on because it's not only something that's easy, but it's something that everybody knows and is familiar with if you do a card trick.
yeah. Would you say you were able to customize your tricks for like when you go on different shows like around the world, or if you do go around the world?
It depends on the trick. A lot of tricks you can, just because a lot of tricks can be engineered to be done silently, and if you can be silent in magic, you can perform anywhere, which is nice. I have a whole silent act that I just do to music. For that reason, I haven't worked internationally ever yet, but I do have that there if it's needed. And a lot of tricks can be changed for different languages. Like I have a trick that's completely silent and uses a bunch of uh, written down uh, written down signs on a sketch pad to do
Yeah,
the trick where a card is selected, and that could easily just be changed to a different language if I just memorize when I need to react to which one. But genuinely, the easiest way to do international is to just perform silently.
yeah. Uh, how you said it was that people have you and the other magicians around the industry have kind of gotten like a little looser with the like magicians rules and everything. How have you ever broken a rule?
I definitely have. Magic's rules are more unwritten than anything else. We're not like contractually obligated to follow them. It's more by honor. There's definitely been times where I've revealed tricks to people I'm performing for just because I kind of feel like it. I'm not too I'm not too wound up when it comes to revealing tricks and not revealing tricks. I'm more relaxed in general as well as just performing. So if somebody's I'm performing for and I can see that they're really interested in magic, I might reveal a trick for them. Just because if I think they'll want to continue learning and perhaps become a magician, then it would be worth it. But I can't say every magician has opened up, especially the older members who have done magic for however many decades now. They really hate it if you reveal any tricks because it's a sacred art and everything. And I just think it is good to understand that, but I do think they're a little behind with how far we've evolved with magic nowadays.
Like the people from like back in the '60s and '50s and stuff like that.
Yeah, but even now we have like 50-year-old magicians and things like that that get absolutely mad if they learn that you revealed any secrets at all, no matter the circumstances.
Even if it's a card trick or something like that.
Yeah, especially if it's a card trick. I don't know why, because they certainly can't do the card tricks.
Mhm.
I've watched them do it a lot, but I think they think of it as more of a principle than anything else of revealing the trick. But I personally, I get it, and I don't reveal tricks that either aren't mine to reveal or that are like really famous. But if it's a trick that I've made or it's a trick that nobody has probably seen in years because I found it in an old magic book that barely sold, then I'm fine telling people about it just because it might help get a new magician. And if not, a lot of people like to peek behind the curtain some days.
was there ever a point in your career, or was there ever a point in your career, like when you first started to now, like where you kind of had, and where you kind of were in that little mindset, of, I can't tell anybody anything.
Of course, I mean that's what we're told at the beginning. Once you start magic, you're told that you cannot tell it to anybody no matter what, blah, 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 blah. It just takes being in magic so long and understanding that at the end of the day, it kind of really doesn't matter that much whether you tell somebody or not. Because even if you do tell somebody how it works or like what the trick is, a lot of people are not going to do anything else beyond that. They're just going to know that they know that trick and they could eventually forget. So I wouldn't say it matters as much as people want you to think it does.
Yeah,
And I certainly have learned through performing that I'm fine giving it away every now and then just because it truly does not matter in the long run, I feel like. Like,
yeah,
obviously, you don't want
yeah.
to reveal. There are a lot of magicians, especially in the recent couple of weeks, that have gotten outed from the magician community for only revealing tricks. But the difference is that they have revealed tricks that aren't theirs to reveal, that other magicians created and sell and perform in their own show, and have been very disrespectful when asked not to do that. That's the difference, is that I only reveal my tricks, and even then it's like they're not really that good.
Yeah. Do you just obviously because you have to kind of keep it because you got to keep it a secret or you're just ruining the whole thing for the
Hmm.
so yeah. Talking about business a little bit for like a few questions. How when clients are like when you're picking up like a gig for like a birthday party or like I don't just say Disneyland, like how far advance should they get you like call you or whatever?
We definitely don't want to do same dayers, because if a magician is like, I can do a same dayer if I don't work my actual job in very large quotations. But especially magicians who only do magic, like, I think the best one would be a week, if not 2 weeks out, is when you'd want to give us a call or an email, try to set something up. Because if you don't, the if you don't do it as quickly, more than likely that slot will already be filled up by somebody who called ahead of time.
You said you had an like quote unquote an actual job. Do you work somewhere else like for part time or what do you
Yeah, I
mean by
work
that?
at a movie theater part time when magic and art aren't paying the bills.
You which movie theater do you work at if you don't mind share? Like,
Brew House, I'm a server there, so
uh,
I do shifts a lot and run the ropes and everything.
I think I might have saw you there once. Yeah.
Probably, yeah, a lot of people have.
Where have you all like going back like way back to like one of the first questions I asked. Where did you say you if you traveled anywhere? Because if you haven't, where did you travel for your
Yeah.
job?
For magic, I've only ever traveled to San Francisco, and LA to perform magic. I've actually traveled more places selling my art at conventions than I have with magic. That's not to say that's the norm. It's more so because I enjoy traveling with art more and doing shows more around the US. But magic, you can certainly travel to a lot of places and perform if you really wanted to. The thing with magic is that it's kind of a market that a lot of people are doing at the same time in a lot of different places, because magic is something that you can do even until you're like 90 or something, because the level of tricks and their difficulty is so broad that you can be doing tricks in your 80s and even 90s if you kept going. So it's kind of hard to do tricks outside of your state, at least in my experience, until you've been hired for a contract for something. Then you get to travel a good amount.
Have you said you sell your art like you sell your art. What kind of art do you do?
I do a lot of fan art mostly of popular media like Hazbin Hotel and Hello Boss. That's the main stuff that I make right now, and I'm good friends with quite a lot of people on that show's respective crew. And that's sort of what I do as my main job now. It's been quite fun doing, and I've just kind of enjoyed it a bit more than magic, which is why I kind of put magic on the part-time side and doing art full-time right now.
You so you sell like Comic Cons and stuff like that.
Yeah, comic conventions, anime conventions, furry conventions. There's quite a few all around that I do.
Is there like a website I could check it out?
Kind of, yeah. It's a bit of a long query, but I have a few social medias.
How challenge like talking about like making a career, like of course you work a part-time job, but and when you actually are working a job for like being a magician, is it how challenging is it to actually make it a thing?
Um, there's always jitters and a bit of nervosity with performing because you don't want to mess up, especially if it's like the first big gig of whatever contract you sign. You don't want to mess it up or anything. So I would say there's a good amount of anxiety when it comes to performing, at least in my opinion. But a lot of the time, that's just getting up to it. Once I start performing, I'm pretty relaxed, I would say, because I'm kind of in my element, I think. It sort of just goes away once you start performing. I think, especially it depends on how difficult of a trick you pick to perform, which most of the time I pick kind of easy tricks just because I enjoy focusing on how I'm performing more than the difficulty of the trick.
Do you have any tips and tricks like on how you do like how you like kind of like you practice like with time and everything?
Yeah. Always perform in front of a mirror before anyone else. It you don't want to always perform in front of a mirror like only, but you definitely want to use it as much as you can because you'll learn your angles, which are important in magic, which is how far you can turn with something before that reveals to whoever's standing nearby how it's done. So then you know how to stand and how to perform when you're doing a trick. Um, but also just helps you focus on like how you look when you perform, and that's quite important because you don't like when you're starting out of magic you're going to look very anxious, very nervous, and that can't be helped at all. That just comes with performing as much as I have. Once you get past that and you can kind of focus on how you actually do look when you perform, you want to look a bit more confident and a bit like I look confident but I also look relaxed is what I've been told, which helps people get into the trick.
Would Is there a certain amount of time you would say you spend on like average trying to perfect your I'm just gonna say your talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's always being perfected with new tricks coming out every day. You never really run out of things that you can try to protect or try to perfect. I personally, per trick, I give each trick that I do nowadays like 3 days of practice before I go out and perform them at all, whether it's walk around at a bar or anything like that. Um, that's only come from years of practicing for weeks and weeks on just one trick. Because when you learn a trick and you've practiced it enough to know it, you can sort of start shortcutting a little bit of practice time because you're kind of aware of what comes into it when practicing.
Has there ever been a point in your where in your career where you just kind of feel like you should give up?
Oh yeah, that comes a lot, especially with Magic. It's all about getting gigs and everything. And the landscape of gigs nowadays for Magic is quite different than it was when I first started, with TikTok and social media being the prevalent way to be hired, more than getting out there. Kind of feels like sometimes it's 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 interesting to find the balance, and I certainly haven't myself, just because I dislike performing magic on social media for various reasons. So I have certainly thought about it, and especially now that art has come along with as much as it has, I have definitely just put it on the sideline a little bit more. But magic's kind of endearing because even if you quit, you can always just be a hobby magician and collect tricks to fool around with at home if you really wanted to. And then eventually you can get back into it if you so choose to, but some people don't. So it's kind of a unique hobby in that way that you can continue it at a lot of different levels.
You said that you when you're older, you kind of just want to become like a hobby musician. Uh,
Yeah.
do you is that forever, or is there ever a point where you just kind of want to put them down?
I mean, eventually I'll probably put them down if I get too busy with something. But I don't think I'm ever going to fully put down magic unless it's for a very good reason. Just because it's a nice hobby to have, in my opinion, but it's also a good talking piece. Because, whenever I go out in any party or anything, I always bring a few tricks with me because there's somebody there that's gonna be like, "Oh, you're the magician guy. Do a trick." And then you go, "Oh, okay, here we go." And then from there, you can sort of do a little bit of a show for all the people at that party of performing and doing a few tricks here and there. So I don't think I'm gonna fully put it down for a long time, but it might happen at some point. I might switch it off just for a while.
So it's like a little part of you after all this time.
I would say so at this point. It definitely is with how much work I've put into magic. I know a lot more about misdirection and how to make someone look in a certain place while I do something sneaky so that it's hidden. I know a lot more about that nowadays than I know about like holding down a corporate job or an office job or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, of course. Are there any would you say there are any misconceptions about being a magician that people would just probably wouldn't get?
Yeah, people like to think we're very snarky, we're very this and that. We're so full of ourselves because we do all these great tricks, and we like to make fun of our audience members as well. And while that is true for some magicians, because of just the way they perform, it's definitely not true for a lot of magicians nowadays. I would say a lot of magicians nowadays don't really perform that way anymore because that's how people performed previously. Is a lot of snarky, sarcastic, or a lot of snarky, like full of yourself comments, a lot of putting down of the person on stage with you. And I think it's perpetuated a really bad narrative for magicians that a lot of other magicians don't really want to admit, which is kind of sad. So I personally don't think of magicians that way anymore, just of how I've evolved my performance style. And I've certainly tried to help change that as well.
Would you say being a comedian is kind of a key part of being a magician in a sense?
It is, yeah. In magic, if you don't perform comedy, you perform quietly or artistically. And then if you don't perform those two things, it's kind of a boring show. And the thing with comedy and magic is it's really, really easy to be funny with magic because there's a lot of jokes you can put in here and there and definitely continue it that way. So I would say it's an integral part of magic to be a good in comedy as well, but it's not too necessary nowadays, I would say.
Hi there. Uh, for some reason, the outro cut out from the video, so sorry about that, guys. But basically, check out his website. It's in the description as shown. And I'm hope if you want to see more of these fun little videos, subscribe. Check out my Spotify. They're all there. And check out my TikTok. Maybe I'll actually get them uploaded. Who knows? But in seriousness, hope to see those subscriptions coming in. Love ya.